Greetings, conservatives. This is your humble host, John Moraga, and we are back with more ConservaCast. We look forward to keeping you informed with the latest and most relevant commentary of conservative issues. So without further ado, here are a few topics I'd like to discuss.
Agree to disagree. Now, I've said before, we should major on the majors. Focus on what we agree on. When I say we, I'm speaking of conservatives, of course. And in this very brief video, I want to make it clear you can agree and disagree with President Trump. It boggles my mind how people can be so extreme on one side or the other. Now, granted, President Trump doesn't make it easy for people to be in a middle ground, so to speak. Personally, his personality, his own personal presentation. He's a very divisive type of person. But I want to make it clear. You can disagree with some things of President Trump, and you can agree with some things of President Trump. The Never Trump camp and the uber Trump fans are on two extremes. And it's very frustrating that people classify you as one or the other. If you are an extreme Trump fan, then if you disagree with him, then you're automatically a never Trumper, or you're just standing in the way because you're not getting on board. You're not getting on the Trump train. You have disagreements with some of his policies or some of the things that he says, and so automatically you're off the team. In the same way, the never Trumpers are those who just can't stand him. If you agree with a handful of his policies or some of the things that he's doing, you're automatically a Trump superfan. And you're just brainwashed. You're automatically jumping onto the Trump train and you're just going full-fledged. It's ridiculous because that is actually something that the liberal media has been successful portraying both sides as being that extreme. I'm at a loss for words. I don't want to ramble on in this video about this issue, but I just cannot emphasize enough. You can agree and disagree at the same time with President Trump. Any other previous politician, even conservative Republican politicians, presidents, I've brought this up before, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan released a lot of people who were mentally ill who needed care. Ronald Reagan also was, although duped or tricked into amnesty, he gave amnesty to some illegal immigrants. There are some things that you can disagree with Ronald Reagan, but the vast majority of his presidency, the vast majority of his term and his politics were, for the most part, conservative or right-wing. But if we're going to be objective, if we're going to be fair, if we're going to be mature enough about our political conversation, we have to come to an understanding that you can agree and disagree with President Trump without being an extreme on one side or the other. I'm going to have people attack me. I'm going to have people not watch or extremely disagree with my position in trying to bring some sense, some type of agreement. I get mixed up with my words because it's one of the most infuriating things happening right now in our country and our politics is that Trump himself, I'm not alleviating him from any blame because he does bring a lot onto himself, but he's being used as a focal point. You either love him or you hate him. You either agree with everything he does or you disagree with everything he does. You either believe his presidency is illegitimate and he should have never won in the first place, or you believe that he's being unjustly attacked from all sides and that he never gets a fair shake. It's all about the fake news. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could play both sides. I could make a strong argument for both sides, but what does that do? At the end of the day, what does that do for us? Nothing. Nothing. In fact, as conservatives, we already have very few friends in the public arena, in the public square, and whether it's the media, forget it. That's out there. Even Fox News, who's used to claim to be conservative or right wing at times, has gone pretty far out there in its own type of soap opera news. In the public square, being from California, I cannot go out into the city and to the shopping areas or even to the park where I take my children sometimes to go play. Some of the parents there talking on their phones or talking amongst themselves. It's a very left-wing progressive culture, especially in California. Now, there are pockets throughout the country, as I'm sure many of you may know, but for the most part, conservatives have very few friends anyway. Why do we want to isolate ourselves? Why do we want to be so divisive with other conservatives? Now, granted, obviously, there are breaking points to where we have to say, I'm sorry, you just need to move on. I'll get a lot of grief for this too, but one example is Tommy Lauren, I believe. I don't really pay much attention to her other than the fact that she claims to be a conservative. I really don't get her, but apparently she's gained a following. One of the big things that many of you may know, she got removed from working with the Blaze Media, I think, or Glenn Beck, mainly because she came out as pretty supportive of abortion issues. Now, she's tried to backtrack that, but that's one example of to where I would say, let's part ways now. Now, you would say about the same thing about President Trump, and I wouldn't fight you about that. Oh, well, he's done one X, Y, and Z to make us say he's no longer somebody who conservatives can support or who should never have supported. Folks, above all, God is supreme. When we look at President Trump, we don't necessarily look at somebody who is our religious authority. He is not the absolute authority in our lives. He is a politician. He is a president. Now, I will even go so far as to say, as somebody who believes in God and believes in the scriptures, I used to pray for President Obama. As much as I disagreed with almost everything that he did and everything that he stood for, I still prayed for him because that is what the scriptures tell me to do. They demand that we do that, to pray for our leaders and that they have guidance. Whether or not they act upon that, whether or not they're moved by that, we are called as people who believe in scripture, if you do, to allow that grace. As much as he may mess up, as many mistakes as he may make, as much as you disagree with the man, we are obligated to give grace to his position, to his place and his authority over our country, especially because he is the commander-in-chief and he has the authority to send people to war or at least into battle, however temporary. And so he has been given a place of authority in our country. At the very least, as conservatives usually tend to be Bible-believing people. As we've talked about before, Conservatives Corner believes in the three pillars of conservatism, and the first primary core is biblical precedent. So if we base our political philosophy on scripture, then we have to observe the actual mandate that we need to provide some grace, understanding, and prayer for the man. It's hard, especially when you do disagree with him. I have no problem mentioning things in areas that I disagree with President Trump. But as soon as I say those things of disagreement, I'm an ever-Trumper. I'm somebody who just wants him to fail and to be impeached and to be removed from office. If I say things kindly about the man, then I'm just brainwashed. I don't even have a mind of my own. I'm just getting on board, and no, I'm unreasonable. I'm going to wrap this up to just say, please, for the sake of your own sanity, do not be so extreme and impulsive to blanket your thoughts one way or the other. Can we agree that if we understand that ultimately this is a time in our history, a time in our politics that is pretty partisan, it is pretty extreme, but if we don't get so wrapped up into it and make it so much a part of our lives, then maybe we can step back. Maybe we could have a little bit more of a mature, objective conversation without getting so passionate about things, and understanding that the history of our presidents, the history of politicians, is that they aren't perfect. No president or politician is perfect. And when we're dealt the cards that we have been dealt, let's try and use them accordingly. Does that mean we don't get involved? No. But does that mean we should just lose our minds one way or the other? No. I ask you, I plead you, as Americans, as conservatives, please, let's try and be a little bit more sensible and come to an agreement of what we do believe. And from there, we can talk about things. We can discuss things. But what's happening in our country right now is very frustrating. Please join me and have some type of unity as Americans, as conservatives, to not be so impulsive and jump to one side or the other. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us once again, and we hope you will invite your friends and family to join us in our efforts to champion conservatism for generations to come.